Hi, this is Shauna, the CEO and founder of Fuel Talent. One of the things I have loved most in my 25-year recruiting career has always been the stories that people tell. Stories of leadership, career choices, company ideas, and team building. My inspiration for starting the What Fuels You podcast came from being curious about people's lives and wanting to help share their stories. What path brought them to this place? What decisions did they make that led to failures and successes? Who influenced those decisions, and what lessons were learned along the way? I hope you enjoy the What Fuels You podcast. Today's guest on the What Fuels You podcast is Jessica Eggert. Jessica is the CEO and founder of LegUp, a venture-backed Seattle-based organization that connects families to available childcare and helps small business childcare providers grow. Prior to LegUp, Jessica spent over 10 years in operations, HR, and consulting at various companies, including Common Engine and the Riveter. She also serves as an advisor at Ethel's Club, the first social club in digital space for people of color, and Female Founders Alliance, a startup community dedicated to accelerating the success of highly scalable companies founded by women and non-binary individuals. Alongside these roles, Jessica is a vice chair of the King County Democrats. She previously sat on the board of the Seattle Children's Theater and was a member of the World Economic Forum's Seattle Hub, where she helped organize and lead several initiatives, including raising money for those affected by wildfires. Jessica currently lives in Seattle with her husband and 2 children. Welcome, Jessica.
Thanks, Shauna. Thanks for having me.
So I'm guessing that the kids are not like around, or that you just have them like hidden in the other room. We're doing this on Zoom.
They're somewhat hidden. One is at school part-time, and the other is upstairs with our nanny right now.
Oh, good. Yeah, we'll talk about the nanny. I'm guessing that that's how the whole LegUp story began.
It is. Well, it's more of an au pair. I always feel kind of weird calling her an au pair. But
we had an au pairs. Actually, that's lots to talk about. We had, I think, maybe 7 or 8 years worth of au pairs, and they're still in our lives. And that was the best move ever. Okay, so we're going to start with some rapid fire. I gave you some easy ones and then some more challenging ones. Okay. Do you have a nickname?
I go by Jess, but only if people ask.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's Jessica.
Yeah. And if your parents call you Jessica, are you like in trouble?
Yes, all the time.
Yeah. Okay. Are you pool or beach?
Beach.
And what's your biggest fear?
Not being a good mother.
Oh, God, that's so true for so many moms. Isn't that so the truth?
It's hard.
You are a great mother, but I have read things that you've talked about. You're a great mother because you love them. I mean, at the end of the day, giving them love, unconditional love, is an incredible gift. Okay, what's your favorite genre of movie? Not that you're having time for movies these days, but
yeah, like horror, but not bloody, where I'm scared, but not too scared.
Oh, I would say the exact opposite. I hate horror. I hate feeling scared. Then when I'm like alone, I'm like picturing somebody coming in like into the shower. I'm like, that is not my mind at all.
My mind actually goes into like fighter. I constantly think about like what would happen if something like this happened. What's my plan? I'm a planner. So.
Yeah. Okay, sweet or salty? More fun question.
Salty.
If there was a book written about your life, what would it be called?
Wow. Chaos.
If you could be famous as an athlete, author, movie star, or musician, which would you choose?
Athlete.
Did you play a sport growing up?
I did. I played volleyball in high school and
Nice.
A little bit in college. Yeah.
A little bit in college. That's great. Okay. So tell me everything. Where are you from? We cross over so much with so many people, but this is fun for me because I get to know you better.
Yeah, I love it. So I'm in Seattle now, but I've only been here for 8 years. I'm actually leaving next month. It's the first time publicly saying that.
Where are you going? No bueno.
I am. So I'm going back to Tampa, actually. So I'm from Tampa, Florida. Raised there. I was a military brat. So we moved a lot of places. My parents divorced in the Tampa area, and my family, my husband's family, everyone's out there.
Yeah. And right now with little kids, it makes total sense that you would want that support. Has COVID played a role in that decision at all? Like them being more open?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Interesting. A lot of people are leaving Seattle right now. But anyway, okay. So you have siblings. You said your whole family's out there?
Yes, I'm the oldest of seven, and I've got my parents, both sets of parents, his parents, and they've got lots of kids and grandchildren. And so everyone except my
You have a
sister who's out here.
tremendous support system. That's amazing.
Huge, huge.
Huge. The oldest of seven, how does that play into your identity?
It's been everything, honestly. Yeah, it's definitely the reason why I am. I don't. Have you ever read those Little Miss books when you were younger?
No.
There's this little series called The Little Miss and Little Mister. There's Little Miss like cranky, Little Miss liar, Little Miss boss was mine. And my mother would hand that to me. And she said, even when I was younger, I would just walk around and be like, boss, 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 and take care of everybody.
Yeah.
Always been the bossy one in control. Yeah.
Oldest of seven. That's crazy. Are they all in Tampa?
My sister and my brother, I moved up here with me, and now I'm leaving them.
Oh man. And
yeah.
Tell me what you were into as a child besides being boss lady.
You know, being the oldest of seven in a divorced family, not a whole, I definitely went up being a caregiver a lot. I went through a rebellious phase between like 15 and 17 before I got myself 2 jobs and got out of that. So I was really into skateboarding for a while. And that's, other than that, I just worked.
Yeah. You were working. And did you get a sense when you were younger that you wanted to be successful?
I built a 15-year life plan when I was 17 and decided exactly what I was going to do.
Have you done where are you on this whole like personality assessment?
So I use the core values index because it's, I don't know if you've heard of that one. It's actually based here in Seattle. So I am a builder banker. I am the person who collects a lot of details and then tells everybody what to do.
Well, that's a good leadership quality, isn't it? I would think.
As long as you can balance in that nurturing side. Yes, I found that I've got to pull that in a lot more. Yeah.
And I'm guessing you were kind of mentoring and guiding others. Did you have people in your life that were guiding you along the way?
Not as much until I started my corporate career. I didn't really have a lot of mentors, not a lot of stability really. And so, I had mentors in my bosses, honestly. And I don't know if they saw me as a mentee, but, I just watched and emulated a lot.
Yeah.
Picked up a lot of bad habits too, but yeah.
Yeah. And so what about your parents? What kind of values, their core values, what were they teaching you?
My father taught me respect really early. He was military lifer. And so when we were on base, we would walk around and people would salute him, and we were just taught respect really early. But then other than that, I think about right now in our own family, we have family values. We call them the Eggert family values. And my kids, they learn them, and they're supposed to, do everything around those values. Right. But then I think about that growing up, and I didn't have anything like that as structured. But I think just life lessons, teaching me hard work, responsibility, being the oldest and the caregiver, in a very intense family.
Yeah. What are your current Eggert family values?
So Eggerts are always respectful. We never lie, and we take care of each other, and that's it.
Those are great ones. I mean, it's just the core, right? So were you a good student? Were you you said this rebellious phase during probably a pretty important time for school. Did that spill over into impacting your grades in a negative way?
It did. I didn't care about school as much when I was in high school. I was actually in the culinary arts, so I guess I left that part out.
Are you cooking still?
I bake a little bit, don't have as much time, but all throughout high school, aside from skateboarding, so I spent all of my time in the kitchen at the school, actually working with them. And we launched a, little bakery in there. And then I left. And actually, that's how I helped fund myself a little bit through the first few years of college, was baking, and besides the other jobs.
Yeah, good for you. Tell me, I know that you've spoken up a lot about being a woman of color as a leader. What was your high school like? Was there diversity in your high school? How did that impact you, if at all?
It did. So I actually ended up growing up in a very white neighborhood with kind of a white family. So my mother is Puerto Rican, and she can identify as white. She's I guess pale Puerto Rican, and my brother and my sister who look like me, who are darker skin, they actually grew up with my father, and so I grew up in a house where everyone else around me was white. We grew up in a very white neighborhood. The high school is very white, although there were there was a good amount of Hispanic people because we were in a high school that was out near cows and a lot of farmland. And there was a lot of Hispanic people in that area. Mm-hmm. And so, other than that, though, I grew up in a very white neighborhood and white, family. And it was, I didn't realize at the time that diversity, how it affected me. The first time I was called the N-word was in middle school on the bus, and I didn't really understand it. And my mother really couldn't talk about it, didn't feel comfortable to. And so it's taken me a long time to find out more about the Black side of my family, the heritage there,
And when in your life did you feel like you found your voice and your confidence to be able to speak up?
That's a really great question. When I started therapy at 28 and realized that I was waiting for permission to talk about it, and there was no permission to be given, I just had to start speaking.
Yeah. And were you worried about any sort of backlash or anything like that?
Yes, because I started my corporate career very early. And one of the things I told myself was if I wanted to hit my goals, I needed to stay back a little bit and hide a lot of things about who I was. I never told anybody my age. I never spoke about being Black or being different, being the only woman at the table, being the only person of color in the room. And so I started speaking up about more, right? Especially when I started therapy, being a woman of color. And I wasn't afraid of the backlash so much as I was afraid of how it, I guess in a way it is backlash, like how it would affect my career.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just what opportunities would be given.
Yeah. So you started your career young and ended college. I know you started in community college and then ended up at University of South Florida. How did you choose that school? You wanted to stay in Florida?
I was there. I was living by myself, putting myself through college, and was also working a full-time job. And so it was just a natural transition for me. I actually ended up never graduating college. I went to school first for culinary arts in community college, then switched to accounting and business, and then went to school for economics, but it got in the way of my career and me growing, and nobody really knew. And so
yeah. Interesting. As a recruiter, I actually just got referred someone who's so high level. And I sent him out a few places who wouldn't interview him because of his lack of degree. And I was just like, this is such antiquated thinking. And has that impacted you at all in getting interviews?
No, actually, the way I always played it is that I went to college and I never tell people I graduated or anything. But it was never really a thing, right? I went to school for economics. I got a lot of those courses out of the way. I had a baby. Right. And in the South, it's pretty normal to have a child when you're 21 or so. I had my son at 23. And between that and working a career where I was making really, really good money, it was close to six figures. I was like, I don't need to.
It doesn't make any
finish
sense.
School.
Yeah. So you had 6 years with your career in Tampa doing roles that ranged from executive assistant to lots of roles in ops, which it sounds like really matches your personality. Just keeping things organized and programmed and planned, incredible skill sets, great foundation. What ended up bringing you our way to Seattle, so far away from your family?
Yeah. My husband got a job in Amazon. Was it 2014 or so? And so it seemed like a lot of people were moving here around that time for Amazon.
Yeah. And is he still there?
He is 8 years later.
Yeah. Wow. So what's going to happen? I guess they're remote, and so he can work from Florida.
Yeah. His whole team kind of dispersed really quickly. So.
Yeah. Interesting. And when you got here, was it easy to find a job?
I actually kept working for the company I was at back on the East Coast. And so I spent a lot of time in the air, traveling to the East Coast, to the Central, and then overseas.
Yeah. Interesting. And then I know you worked at the Riveter, which was obviously a big company here, and one that got impacted a lot, I know, by COVID. You were there for a period running culture. Was that an experience that helped integrate you kind of deeply into the community?
It was. I spent a lot of time in the community first, knowing that there weren't a lot of people here that looked like me, and I wasn't sure if they thought like me either. So I actually held a lot of events, went to a lot of events, spent a lot of time integrating into the community. That's actually how I ended up meeting Amy. And so for me, it was really about entrepreneurship. I knew I could move fast and work hard, but that's a whole different level of moving fast and working hard.
Especially during the time that you were there. And so what types of events did you host? And then also, I mean, obviously I read it in the intro, all of your advisory work and just things that you've gotten involved with between the King County Democrats and Seattle Children's Theater, all of it, economic. I mean, it's been incredible to see. Was that your way of kind of just really doubling down and saying, I'm going to get in this community in a big way?
It was my way of finding what my next 15 years was going to look like. I talked about that 15-year plan, and I had reached it earlier than I had expected, and I felt really lost. And so I needed to try a lot of different things, meet different people with different perspectives to figure out what the future held for me.
Mm-hmm. And did you come to these meetings, or first of all, I have two questions. One, did you come into these meetings with kind of an agenda around what you were trying to get out of the meetings? And then also, how do you create a 15-year plan?
Naively. So I did go to any meetings, any groups or anything. I knew what I wanted to get out of it at the end, and what skills I could put in. And so, that's really how I approached it. If I could see something at the end of it for me, for my career. I think that sometimes it felt kind of icky, but then also realized that I'm still adding a lot of value to, whatever groups I was a part of. So I had to learn how to build up that confidence for sure. Then, so the 15-year plan, I will say that I still haven't figured out that 15-year plan, especially once I left the Riveter. My husband and I decided to have our second child. And while we had some downtime, quote unquote, and then started LegUp. 2 months later.
Tell me about the origin story of the company and how you met your co-founder and all of that. I know you've been going at it now for 2.5 years. How's it going? And tell me everything.
It's going great. It didn't go well at the beginning. It was pretty hard. I wasn't sure what problem I was truly solving. I just knew that working in HR, working around so many women, seeing so many women leave and break down in tears because they couldn't take job promotions because of a lack of accessibility to childcare. And then, seeing at the Riveter as well, it was just really difficult for people to be able to find and afford access childcare. And so it wasn't until I had to experience it the second time, right, with my daughter, when we were 3 weeks pregnant, found out we were pregnant, and we were excited. And the first thing out of our mouth was like, oh, crap, we didn't sign up for waitlist yet. That was the plan. We had plans, start trying, sign up for waitlist that next month, be ahead of the curve. And we didn't. And I was like, this is just so difficult. At the same time, I had a 5-year-old almost 6. And we were still looking for summer camps. Nothing was getting easier. So I said, I've got to fix this, right? I've got to make it easier for parents to be able to find care. And so I took it from that finding approach first and failed pretty hard, honestly. So, we went out, it started with an Airtable spreadsheet. I built a list of all of the camps and all of the childcare programs in the area. And they started looking at, their availability and how to contact them. And that took off. And so I said, well, let's build this into a directory. And then the feedback we got, we launched pretty quickly. We were able to launch, a beta version of it within 3 months. And then tested it, and parents, we had over 1,000 camps activities in the platform. And then we talked to parents and said, was this helpful? And they're like, not at all. Great. And, I ended up realizing that the search wasn't enough, that we needed to help with the enrollment. And, I actually had that realization, we shut that first phase of it down. I ended up having my daughter then, so I got pregnant. I gave birth to my daughter. And then about 6 weeks later, after I had a conference actually with Leslie and I did a speaking engagement, brought our babies on stage. And I was like, it's time to get back. Let's figure out what I'm supposed to do. So we actually went and worked in childcare programs for a while, and brought her along and said, how can we, needed to understand the backstory of what was happening with childcare providers, and found out the majority of them are people like me, women and people of color and people who have families. And these are all small businesses, and they were struggling to be licensed. To be a licensed childcare provider is incredibly difficult. You love what you do. You went out to be a teacher and care and educate children. And instead they realized how much actually went into running the business. It's heavily regulated. It's so regulated that it's so costly for them to run it, that even though we're paying what feels like an exorbitant amount of money for childcare, those childcare providers and the teachers barely make minimum wage. And so staffing was hard, keeping up with everything internally. And then enrollment was even harder. Everything just felt like it was paper stacks everywhere, managing wait lists. And, so we came in and said, how can we solve this problem? And it felt like it was bringing everything together. But my passion around helping women and people of color, helping women start businesses, organizing everything, right? Like my type A personality was able to come in and say, nope, we can streamline this. How do we keep the relationships there? And so when I came to the realization of what it needed to be, I was able to figure out who I needed, and started interviewing a lot of people. And I actually met my co-founder through a woman named Milkana, who ran a company called Jargon here in Seattle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so what's the business model? How does the company make money?
Yeah, so we're a B2B childcare marketplace, and we help childcare providers be able to manage all of their enrollment processes. And then we connect families to that available care. So behind the scenes, because we are, integrating into their systems, we've created their enrollment system for them, enrollment and marketing tools, a very lightweight CRM. We have all the real-time supply data. And then we're able to surface that to actually employers. So we go and work with employers to help their employees be able to find childcare. And we partner with city and government agencies to give them that information that they need to be able to help low-income families be able to find childcare as well. So we're able to create equity. We make money through employers, through our partnerships as well. And then we keep our tools free for childcare providers.
Got it. And so, what's been the biggest challenge now that you've pivoted to kind of including all this enrollment piece?
So we launched the second version of LegUp March 12th, 2020, that morning. And then that afternoon, I got the call to come pick up my child from school because of COVID. And that was a struggle, basically growing the company during a tumultuous year. And, for all of us, and definitely for childcare providers who still stayed open during COVID, they had a business to run, people still needed childcare, but facing so many different challenges in a way that's going to stick. We thought a lot of these challenges were going to disappear. And thankfully it was just two of us. I feel really grateful that we hadn't become big by that point,
and then had to lay
because we
people
just had
off.
to change so much. I mean, we iterated on that product so much over the last year before we went out and raised.
And how much have you raised?
So we raised a little under 1.2.
And from angels, like who funded the business?
We were able to stick in Seattle a lot. So angels, but also VCs.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so how has that been for you? There's this whole like idea around, picking investors who are going to be in it with you to the long haul, or ones that are just like, hey, revenue. And especially when you're really trying and you're not in a position necessarily to have like, I mean, maybe you were, but to have people tripping over you. I just know statistically that's hard for women, and women of color even harder. So how did you go about vetting or choosing who to partner with at that level?
It was difficult. I spent a lot of time talking to a lot of people, and I'd already been doing it for, throughout the year, just understanding what investors were looking for. And we were very lucky. Our lead investors, one of them is Pete Higgins from Second Avenue Partner, and then a guy named Reggie Brown, and he's a Black man as well. And this is the kind of business that they were looking for. And they have just been fantastic partners through it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we got very lucky.
Yeah.
But a lot of amazing other angels here who have just been great. Kirby and
Kirby Winfield. Yeah. Sarah Embach. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Those are great ones. Wow. Good for you. And so who are you competing against? Because in my mind, a little bit of this is a different pivot, but in my mind, when I was looking for childcare, I was going to care.com. Mm-hmm. And then also I know that a friend of mine started Poppy.
Avni.
And so I'm sure. And so there's just, how do you know that your timing and your business model are going to be able to, like, why you?
Yeah. So we knew when we look at care.com or Poppy, those were so one-to-one. And, I think this falls into our business model, but also my own approach in life, but it's been a lot of one-to-many, right? So we said, how can we work with childcare programs specifically? They're often cheaper than nanny care, more accessible to a larger group of people. As long as you can find that. And so, around the timing, the big thing was childcare programs weren't looked at as heavily. When we went out to raise, everyone was like, oh, so you're working with nannies. I was like, no, actually, we're working with a massive industry, $56 billion industry, 600,000 childcare programs across the country that haven't gotten the attention that they've needed because no one's been behind the scenes working with these individuals. And so, us being able to come after and stay so close to our customers for so long was really helpful. But then also during COVID, there's been a lot of focus on childcare, right? From the government.
Oh my gosh.
Funding.
Yeah.
So much. So both on the employer side and the government side, it's just been perfect timing for us.
Yeah. And so has the challenge more been in getting the business running with the childcare, with the daycares and childcare workers, or getting the corporations?
I would actually say with the partners. So childcare programs, because we know their business, we speak their language, and it's been pretty easy for us to get them on board. Employers are all about finding benefits for their employees. So that's been great. But for us, where the way we grow really quickly is actually through our government partnerships and agencies. And it's a very fragmented area. And there's a lot of money being pumped into the system right now. And a lot of people figuring out, where does that money go from the American Rescue Plan and the American Families, plan, the new Biden plan that he's coming out with. And so that side's been the hardest, right?
Yeah. Oh, interesting. So, so tell me more about the pandemic and how that has netted out for you as far as impacting your long-term goals for the business.
The pandemic has, in a way, and I always hate talking about it because in a way you're, because it makes me feel kind of uncomfortable when I say like the pandemic was really good for our business.
I understand that. Same with us. And I'm like, it's mixed with like, not shame, but guilt. Cause you're like, many people, so many of my friends and family members are in hospitality and restaurants. And it's just so hard. When they say, how's business? You just almost want to downplay it. But people are cheering you on. People are rooting for you. So tell our listeners how it's gone and also how we can be helpful.
So, I mean, it really has been great for us. The industry realized, a lot of childcare providers realized that they needed technology. They needed to move away from manual systems. They couldn't even let families in the door to be able to see the place where they're going to drop their child off and trust other people with their family and their children. And so bringing them into technology has been great. Working with employers now that they're focused on helping parents, right? Not just women, although women have been disproportionately affected by, this situation in childcare in general for many years. Employers being able to help their parents be able to find and enroll in care so they can get back to work. It's been, they talk about timing when you talk about entrepreneurship and building a business. And I don't think you really realize it until you're in it, like whether or not you have good or bad timing. And the way for us has just been right.
Or like real estate, like how can we time it? We wish we could, we'd all be retired somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think a lot of people can see what's coming up, but for us being in the middle of COVID, it's just been,
and are you going to be, well for us. Are you going to be building a team to support the growth?
So we're a team of 10 right now. We'll add on 2 more before some more growth. So we are actually in Washington State. We have partnerships now in Colorado, New York, and a few other states as well. To grow.
Good for you. And what are the long-term goals for the business? I'm guessing, knowing your personality and knowing how you've described yourself, I'm guessing you feel successful because you took the leap to start it. And that takes a lot of courage and grit. But I'm guessing you don't feel kind of done, obviously, and that there's so much more to go. When will you feel successful? Like, look what I built.
When we can say we can effectively help families of all backgrounds be able to find and access care that helps them stay in the workforce, right? So it doesn't end at 5, right? We think about childcare and it's like 0 to 5, and now it keeps going until I would say at least preteen.
I think it goes, honestly, I think it goes till they drive.
Yeah.
I mean, not that you necessarily need, but I mean, having 3 kids of my own, they're very self-contained as far as I don't have to sit with them on Zoom calls during the pandemic. They do their thing, but I need some sort of care if it's not me to get them where they need to go to activities and maybe it's in the teen, preteen, and then it's maybe a babysitter after, but it's definitely some after school, something till they're, I don't know, 11, 12, 13.
Absolutely. It doesn't stop. And anything that affects you from being able to work, being able to, you only have 2 weeks of vacation and those are spent, with the kids because they don't have school or something, but if it's affecting your career, we want to make sure you have the care that you need to.
I love the angle that you're looking at this from, which is keeping mostly, you're right, it is disproportionately women. As much progress as we've made, usually women run the household in some way as it relates to the kids. So I love that being linked to your goals. And given the age of your kids and given all the stuff that you're doing, and I ask this to men also, it's not just a targeted question to women, but how are you balancing all of it? I did read that you wrote, or publicly said that being a workaholic almost really hurt your marriage. So how are you adjusting and balancing things now?
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. Being a workaholic and traveling. Honestly, having an au pair, my husband actually found the au pair system. And, when we were struggling to find childcare while I was growing the company, and that has been incredibly helpful, having someone in the home to help take care of our children.
Well, and the hours flexibility is so huge.
Yes. Yeah. It's been great. We don't have to get in my car. My husband and I have done a much better job of making it work, but it's been a struggle through COVID, right? Especially raising, he's taken on a lot more of the responsibility.
That's awesome.
Yeah. We make a really good team. And so that's been really helpful.
Yeah. And what about for fun? How are you Finding time for some fun. What do you like to do for fun?
There's no fun. What are you talking about?
You're fun, so that's enough. But what about for you personally, like some self-care, some mental health, preservation?
Friday night, my husband and I like to sit down and binge watch shows. And that's usually when I'll do my nails because I have no time to go to a nail salon anymore.
Fun for him. My husband hates the smell of nail polish. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He sits on the other couch.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you watching these days?
So during COVID, we binge watched Shameless.
Yeah. So good.
So good. And of course, we've watched Ted Lasso multiple times.
I've not watched that one. I've got that on my list.
It's so uplifting. It was so needed during COVID.
Interesting. And so, as far as your plans to leave Seattle, which makes me sad because I love you. And I think that you've been a great addition to the community. I've heard your name from so many people as just like someone to know. And I think it'll be a big gap. What are your plans to integrate into the community beyond your gajillion family members? And how do you plan to scale the business from there? Are you going to be remote?
Yeah. So we're fully remote, thankfully. We've got team members in South Dakota and Atlanta, all over Alaska as well. So for us, I'm really excited because I think Miami is definitely getting a lot of the talk of the town. But
I just got back and I was like, I want to move there. I want a place there. I'm obsessed.
It's amazing. I would say Tampa is a close second, honestly. I mean, I think it's better, but you can't beat the hype of Miami right now. And so, there's a lot of potential there with UCF being there, USF, so close to University of Florida. Those are fantastic business schools and engineering schools. There's a lot of talent. I think Tampa is really hitting a lot on the crypto side. So USF has done a really good job around crypto. There's a few crypto companies over there, but there's a lot of startup. I think it's on the verge of being a really great startup scene, kind of like Seattle was, I would say 10 years ago. There's, I've already been reaching out to some VCs and startup community out there saying, well, how do we hire more people? And how do we make sure that Tampa is the place to be? And then how do we make sure that, LegUp and the Eggerts are known in Tampa?
And what about some of your advisory work? Will you continue that from afar?
I will. Yeah. So I advise FFA here in Seattle, but then also Ethel's Club out of New York. So it'll work out well.
And tell me more about Ethel's Club. I've had Leslie on from FFA and we're a big sponsor of FFA, but tell me more about Ethel's Club. Ethel's
Club was the first, not even workspace, but a community. So now digital community, but social club first for people of color, bringing us people a space to get together and just walking into Ethel's Club. When Naj Austin, the founder and CEO, launched it, it was just so refreshing and you just felt so comfortable walking into a room full of Black people, Black professionals, and just interesting people and who never really had a space to gather before. And I thought that was fantastic.
And it's based in New York?
It's based in New York, and she transitioned it over to an online community.
This is awesome. So my final question for you is what's your fuel? What fuels you?
My work and talking to the customers. I say we're incredibly close to our customers, talking to them constantly, and just the feedback they give, and just knowing that we're doing so much. I think there's a lot that we're doing for parents as well, but these business owners who just need a little bit of support to keep their business going and food on the table for their families, the way we've been able to support them has been great. And then also my kids, she fuels me whether or not I have any say so in it. My 21-month-old, she's wild. She's not calm like my first one.
Thank you for being an inspiration and for all you're doing. And you're helping moms, you're helping childcare providers, you're helping businesses keep their people, which is a huge struggle.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to the What Fuels You podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, and follow us on social media to keep up with the latest news and episodes. You can also contact us at podcast@fueltalent.com to provide feedback, ask questions, and share topics or guests you would like us to cover in the future. We hope you feel inspired by our guests and that we have helped fuel your day. Join us next time for another episode of What Fuels You.